Hello. From the last video, I already walked you through the example how to build up the APIs for the application. Right. In that video, I mentioned about demand response system. For example, how we get the demand response from utility company, and we process the information and we send the requirement into directly to the device through the IoT hub. And especially IoT hub can support about million device, and they can get 1,000 a million messages quickly from a device. So it's very helpful for the control to system, especially the automation system. So today, I walk you through a little bit about how to build the API with the Azure function in for any automation system, from the device to cloud. Yeah, back and forth between the cloud and device, or cloud and customer front end. For example, right? Azure function is the serverless microservice. Yeah, it's have to do something very small thing, like the Lambda function in AWS. So they in Azure function they have several kind of the function like Cosmos trigger, blob trigger, HTTP trigger. Right now, HTTP trigger is very useful for you build up API to get and response the message, right? And for example, the timer trigger, I mean, you can set up the Azure function like the timer. They do as a schedule. They do that's the action as a schedule, right? For here, you can see I built up a lot of the API. Right here, all the API. Right here is the I built. Right here is the HTTP trigger. I mean, they only do one thing for me: the get and respond, the message, the data. That's it. So for any system you want to build up the API to wrap up some information, transfer to somewhere, okay, and you use the HTTP trigger. So in another case, you can use right here, they show you the timer trigger, event hub trigger, or CosmosDB trigger, or a lot. So Microsoft, they build a lot the trigger, the kind the Azure function. Right here, I already deploy the API is already deployed, and when you done the deployment, you can grab the UI right here. This UI, the public UI, and you copy it and use them for your application, right? That's really helpful. And you can go right here to see your the code you write, and they include up some of the two files right here, the function.json, and the second one is the your code. Right here, for example, maybe I return now. I mean, right here is Azure function resource. In the Azure function resource, you can build up 100 the function API right here. I only have several function. Let me check there. Oh yeah, I already turned it up, but you can turn it on, and you see that you made the function work. And I go back to the code, how I build up that function. You had to set up the Visual Studio Code, and Visual Studio Code they can directly connect to your subscription, Azure subscription, and you can deploy what you write right here directly to the Azure Function Resource in cloud. Uh, for example, right here, you see, I have, that's the RBI right here. I built up right here. Yeah. And go back to the code, how to deploy that. You have to should create a folder, and after that you link your account to your Azure function. If they connect, you should go directly to the data, whatever the resource in your subscription. Okay, and you see all the function I create. You just click right here, add. If you want to build a new Azure function, just click add right here, create the function. They automatically create the Azure function. For example, right here you can see Microsoft trigger, timer trigger, blob trigger. It means trigger is mean blob triggers mean it means something, some data they go into your database and then they trigger quickly. If they detect something into your database, right here they say blob. Okay, in IDOS or some container, they trigger to do something else. Okay, timer triggers mean you ask the Azure function do something at specific time every day, every week, every month, or whatever. Is you set up your schedule. For example, you can set up, okay, turn on the light, send a signal to turn on the light every 5 p.m. or something like that, or generate report sent to the business partner at 5 p.m. They do it for you quickly. Okay, and HTTP triggers mean that's the very popular one to get and post the data. It's very popular, right? And CosmosDB trigger is the same thing. The CosmosDB is the unstructured data with a JSON format, right? Well, it mean they have a container, and every time you build up this one, you use this one. It means when the data JSON, they saving into the account, the container, this function will trigger to do something else, to grab up, to send up, to do whatever you want to build up. You have to choose one of them. Or the same thing right here, you can event hub. It means event hub trigger is mean you send the data into event, and this function detect the events is coming. They do something. Okay. Queue storage trigger is mean you put the data in a queue and you handle one by one. Yes, event grid is the same, event hub. Okay, and that's all. For example, right here, I choose the trigger, HTTP trigger, and you put the name HTTP trigger, whatever you want. Okay, ABCD or whatever, and you enter, and you two right here, they have 3 functions. Remember, anonymous mean no password, no user, no authentication, and the public. When you build up, it's a public URL. Anyone can access this one. You can send or request and get without any user and password or authentication certificate, something like that. With the function, it means they control. You had to the API. I mean the URL. They require the function level. They control your function. You need the code. Yeah, on the URL. It means something. Okay, and admin level. It means you. For example, admin level. They have to control all the function. It means admin level. It means you can control all that function. Its function level is mean you control one by one. API you create. For example, I did create, and when you go to the local, you see they generate for you the API, right? With the default file right here. They have initial file, function.json file, sample file. That's the file you need to for you to write the code. Okay, when that, especially in the initial .py, very important. And you write whatever you want. This is the default. You can delete it and build up whatever you want. Right here, that's the HTTP trigger. 2 important things for HTTP trigger. That's the post and get, right? It means post, it means you generate the API you want to post something now. You post the data to another one, right? You need to set up. You go to the file, the configuration file, you go to the function.json. You see they have the get and post, okay? Then you can choose one of them. And for example, and if you get, I mean, you query the data from the database from cloud, and you grab there and for people front end to do something else, right? And for example, after you writing the content inside the main function right here, and after that you just run the local to check it, before you deploy. Okay, you run the local, you have to know the commands to check the local. It means when you run the local, you only check the function on locally on your computer. It's not public yet, right? But it's very helpful to make sure everything right before you public the API. You say you have to use the function store command, right? When you run function store command, you can see all the API you create, right? Each API has a function, okay? For example, that's the function, that's the API we create that time, right? But all the API right now, there's a local host. They only run on the local. But you can use you use this API testing on the Insomnia. You can download the Insomnia for testing API, right? Or you can use the Postman. So you can create new HTTP request, because that's HTTP. You can use the HTTP request. You create new one. You wrap up the API right here. Okay, put into the Insomnia, and if the post trigger, it means you need the data. For example, data in the JSON, XML, whatever you want. The session, for example, you paste the content right here and send. And you see how the response okay or not okay, response some information, whatever. It depends on what you write. You dump the data right here for HTTP response, right? And you see all the API right here. That's a local host, right? When you deploy, you don't see the local anymore, right? And there's some kind of the APIs, some of the API that require the parameter. You can pass the parameter into the URI, right? Or into URL right here. For example, you want to URL pass the name of utility or name of the begin day or the end day, for example, whatever. Or right here, this API will have to change the information. If somebody pass the ID right here, pass the content, or the item, change the item, something like that. That's the dynamic change. Okay, when they pass the data right here, this API will do something else. They query, they sort out, they query, and they respond something else for you. All right, that's the API testing on localhost, right? And I will walk through some example the HTTP trigger. For example, this API. I want this API to somebody pass the data into this URL. For example, name of the power company and the data, the begin and the end day. That's the information I need they pass into this API. And from here, from this data, okay, go back. This is the query event right here. Let's go inside this API and what will do this API. This API, they wrap up the three information, okay? The first time, the utility, begin and end. How they get it, you have to use you have to call the requirement route params and get one. Yes, right here you pass the right here you got pass the utility, you pass the begin day and end day. Okay, after you get it, and one important thing, where you get it, you have to change the configuration in our function right here, right? In the JSON function doc.json, that's configuration, you have to build up the routes right here, where we have the utility, whatever you can put, whatever you want. You can put something else between. Right here, I only need 3 parameters, and you set up there, and you go back to the init doc.py, and you in the function you have to wrap that parameter. And after you wrap this information right here, I work directly with the CosmosDB, right? I would database, so I had to have the key. The key right here helped me to connect to the database right here, the CosmosDB on Azure cloud, and the second thing, the URL to connect to the CosmosDB. And one important thing is you have to set it up the library, Cosmos client library. It's easy. You can go to the Google and searching the Azure CosmosDB Pi right here. They show you how to pip install the Azure Cosmos. Right, really easy. And go back to the code. Okay, and right here is after you pip install this one, and remember, when you install something new package for your Azure function, you have to put everything into the requirement file. When you generate any Azure function, they automatically create this file, the TXT file, and you have to add the new library. The library you need to pip install to install for your Azure function. Okay, put right there. Okay, that's the notes for you. And one device utility event. And okay, go back to this function. This one, that's one after you had the key, the URL. This one is the URL from the CosmosDB, the Azure. When you create the container in the CosmosDB, they give you this one. I show you where you grab it. If somebody don't know how to grab that URL, okay, I create this database. That's a CosmosDB database. The unstructured data, the JSON data, right? In this one, you can see this the URL. You grab it, right? They show you the URL right here. Okay, and the key, you have to go right here to grab the key, either one. So primary key or secondary, grab them and put into your code right here. They help you connect directly to your database. And right here is the database names, right? The database names is right here. In the container, the database right here, you have the database names. For example, right here, I have the event data right here. That's a database name. And inside database, you have a lot of container. Each container contains the specific information. Right here, for example, in this API, I need to query the data from container names, event utility, and you see in the database on cloud, you can see I have that database right here, and you can see that's the database. and and you can see the data right here. I need the API grab the information of utility and the end day and the beginning and the end day. And when the customer or anyone send me that information, the API will grab this information. Okay, for me, I need only this information. This, for example, this information in specific utility with the specific time. That's the function of this API. And to build this one, okay, very simple. I create a list after to connect to the API, after grab the parameter. I put the condition right if UBE right here true, it means if all the parameter right here is correct, it's true. Okay, I had to do something. I look all the event, I find all the event in the database, and after that I query some information into the event. Event right here is the item, the data right here, and I create a new list right here. No. Yeah. And after that, I put the data I create right here. Yep. And I put in, I dumps the data right here in with a JSON right here. It's been a string right here. So I put this data into the response. It means the results I want to grab this data. After I fill in information, I extract from the item I query from the database. Okay, and if I don't see any the content, the which one I want, I will return the list right here is nothing. I didn't find that's any of the data in what's this condition. Okay, if I find something else, okay, I do something and I put right here response right here, and my type right here the JSON format, right? And that's it, how to build up how to work with the Azure function, right? That's the important thing. I also have built up a lot of the API. They kind of similar, nothing different. Each function they do something specific thing. Okay, for example, this one right here, this API only query the data, the same thing, like connect to the database, and after that I use the store procedure function. It means store procedure function is have to query the data. You also use there are two ways you can query the data from the CosmosDB. One, you can use store procedure, and the second one, you can use directly the Cosmos client library. They already build up the functions. You just call and query the data. And after they query the data, I want with right here, I need the ID confirm, right? They confirm when I pass the ID confirm, and they query correct which one I want, and I dump the data right here for response. If somebody use this API, they get this data. That's it. Okay, short video to walk you through around the Azure function and my experience. It's very useful, and I also play with a lot from, for example, timer function. It means somebody you want to set up the time to do something for your application, or trigger function. I mean, block trigger function is very useful to trigger something. And okay, next video I will walk you through something else. It's help you after you get the API. You need a front end. You need the UI or GUI to connect with the Yobi API to do some simulation. Okay, see you next video.